Claiming rights from bloodshed. Women in the Chinese Cultural Revolution. In August 1966, at the Central Committee, General Mao led China to become a communist country. His goal was to de-Westernize China and rid it of his rivals, but in the process, he influenced the women's social, political, and economic status. Though millions were slaughtered in the conflict of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, a new mindset emerged that allowed women to be seen as virtually equal to men. This eventual compromise between old and new values in China led to the development of new rights for women. In the September of 1962, General Mao initiated the Socialist Education Movement, a ratification-style campaign to remove reactionaries from the Chinese Communist Party. Mao called his campaign the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, also known as the Chinese Cultural Revolution. 4 years later, the Chinese Communist Party decided that their current government, the Soviet Union, was too revisionist and westernized. They felt that it was time for China's government system to change. Prior to the Cultural Revolution, women were strictly subordinate to men. The culture of the past strictly emphasized that women were to remain at home and care for their children. With the start of the revolution, women were expected to strongly support the revolution and to volunteer to join the Red Guard while walking behind their male counterparts despite their achievements. Women were often considered as bourgeois or having the characteristics of people in the middle class. However, many other women began taking on types of work that men most commonly did. The muscular and energetic female workers were called iron girls or imitation boys, working under the commune leader Chen Yonggui. Iron girls depicted what women could actually do, not only raise families and stay at home, but fight or mine. These women inspired other Chinese women to work harder and to take on the most difficult and demanding tasks. General Mao once said, "In order to build a great socialist society, it is of the utmost importance to rouse the broad masses of women to join in productive activity. Men and women must receive equal pay for equal work in production." Genuine equality between the sexes can only be realized in the process of the socialist transformation of society as a whole. That May, the first organized brigade of Red Guards formed at Tsinghua University High School. Red Guards denounced their friends, families, and teachers, raiding homes and destroying people's possessions. Children grew up drinking what many call wolf's milk, being born with hatred and taught to struggle and hate. Chen Danyan, a writer in China that composes literature related to women in Shanghai, stated that her generation was named a generation growing up drinking wolf's milk and were considered to be wolf children. She stated that her parents had little income, and for a period of time, her entire family had to sleep on the floor. The Cultural Revolution intended to erase the history and culture of ancient China, so people with any sort of knowledge were sent to work in the fields or were publicly shamed, murdered, mutilated, or tortured. Although women, especially girls in high school with a prosperous family background, were expected to become a Red Guard, it was not mandatory. Author Jili Jiang stated in an interview, "It was not mandatory, but joining was favored. Supporting the revolution by completing jobs was a popular way of contributing to the Cultural Revolution." She said that they were students, but there was no school, so we all participated in the Cultural Revolution. The Red Guards' work was also highly intensive and messed with the natural moral compass. The Red Guards mutilated, humiliated, and tortured many citizens, and sometimes performed public executions. The Red Guards changed the Chinese citizens' view on humanity greatly. Their recklessness, ruthlessness, and evil-doing made many lose their faith in humanity. Not everything Mao did was evil, though, as he was one of the few leaders to believe that women could do the same as men. At the start of the revolution, he stated that times have changed, and today, men and women are equal. Whatever men comrades can accomplish, women comrades can too, and that women hold up half the sky. However, education was scarce. Children no longer went to school unless they came from rich families, and by 1981, 120 million people were illiterate. According to one of the 20-plus million Chinese citizens sent to the countryside, people lost their faith in humanity, which caused them to worship money. However, half of all the doctors and barefoot doctors in the countryside were women, whereas before the revolution, all would be men.
Women that went to the countryside had to pay a price, as they had to bear children, tend to the house, and work in the fields. They held the back end of the compromise. Pan Shuzhen, a woman who paid the price of the Cultural Revolution, stated in an interview with the CS Monitor, "Every day I went to the fields, even when I was pregnant. The hardest time was when we had to dig irrigation ditches in the winter. Even if I was tired and wanted to rest, I couldn't. If I didn't work, I couldn't eat." At first, women had to bear children and take care of the house. Add on the new duties that women were given, and the result is women working harder than men. The Cultural Revolution required many materials in order to function properly, which made the women compromise for China by feeding their households with whatever they had. Bai Wei, one of the many survivors of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, said she was hungry all the time due to the lack of food. As a small child, in order to help her family to get fresh vegetables, she had to get up in the middle of cold winter nights and spend a few hours sitting on her little wooden stool in the long line formed outside of the vegetable stand. Each family was given food quotas based on the family size, and since fresh food was very scarce, whenever fresh food was available every couple of months, there were very long lines. She stated that a few pieces of crackling after her mom rendered her lard from pork fat would be a big treat for her and her little sister. Many people mysteriously disappeared during the revolution. People were captured by Red Guards and were often murdered without warning. A former husband of a Red Guard stated that his former wife's neighbors, both of which were doctors, mysteriously disappeared one night and never came back. She stated that this was not uncommon and that many people with advanced degrees would disappear. The government felt that they were a threat to the process of de-Westernizing China through the Cultural Revolution. Any people that were considered uncommon would be categorized as someone who could potentially cause conflict. Women now have the right to do any job just like men, as the Cultural Revolution allowed both genders to be equal. China as a whole has been impacted greatly, as there are now large statues of General Mao. Leaders still continue limiting citizens' access to information. China is a communist country. Women are not likely to practice any kind of Western religion, and the fear of expressing any kind of distaste towards the government is imminent. Today, China values education a lot, probably due to the fear of having a lack of education similar to which that occurred during the Cultural Revolution. Even though new rights were formed, women's rights still haven't reached their full potential. Sons are still generally more wanted than daughters, and there is a study that showed that men earn 8% more than their female counterparts. This makes it almost impossible for women to purchase urban property without the assistance of men. Although the Cultural Revolution cost many lives, deprived many of education, and stripped many of nourishment, it allowed women to be virtually equal to men. This phenomenon, a rare event for Asia, had never occurred before on the face of the planet, but was a large step to permanently giving women a seat next to men. The Cultural Revolution will no longer be known as an event that merely changed China's government structure, but as an event that impacted millions of women's rights forever. The Chinese Cultural Revolution forced the long-lasting conflict between old and new values to come to a compromise. This compromise allowed women to perform the same tasks as men could and gave women equal rights as men. Due to this compromise in women's rights, China became able to overcome its previously held third world status. This differentiates the Chinese Cultural Revolution from any ordinary revolution due to its long-lasting effects on Chinese culture, thought process, and most importantly, its values. Without the Cultural Revolution, China would probably become another forgotten Asian country where women lived to serve men. The Chinese Cultural Revolution, a mere 10 years, pulled rights from bloodshed.